Your show now, press 1. To hear important instructions, press 2.
Your show is scheduled to start in 11 seconds. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Love Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Song Radio Show, Red Bill Edition. I am your host, Leon Jones, and I hope everyone is enjoying their Saturday. It is hot, hazy, and humid in the 80s here in the city that established the Purdue Boilermakers. I'm in Lafayette, Indiana. If you're not familiar where Lafayette is, it's 2 hours southeast of Chicago and an hour northeast, an hour northwest of Indianapolis, right along the I-65 corridor. Now, before I get into the topic, I have to give a couple of shout outs. And these shout outs are well deserved. And I want to thank brother Little Big Nate for allowing me to come on to his platform. He has a very good platform. He's a conservative guy. I suggest everyone get over there to his platform. Some other guys I want to shout out to as well. Theo Woff. I believe he is a classic liberal. He's an IT guy, good gentleman, has a good head on his shoulders. He's a generation extra just like I am. But when you have IT issues, I would get over there and talk with him. He's going to have a channel premiering very soon. Trade NBD. He deserves a shout out. Conservative, he's from Houston, intelligent. He's also an Army veteran. I'm a Navy veteran. He spent 21 years in the Army. And my man, check him out, TPOT, Brother Xavier. He has always had some good debates, and all of his debates are well organized. So you can't go on his channel. You can't go on Little Big Nate's channel with a lot of riffraff. Brother Asuma Abdu. He lives in my old state of Maryland. He's from PG County. In fact, he lives in a nice area, PG County. Number of people, when you talk about PG County, they're talking about Bladensburg, Palmer Park, Tacoma Park, Suitland, District Heights, but they forget about Kettering, Mitchellville, Upper Marlboro, and Largo. Very nice African-American areas. Cool Kamasa. He's another good gentleman. And of course, Clue. Now, another thing you need to know. I have another channel called the Mind of STEM channel. And on that channel, I give you information about STEM careers. In fact, I conjured up the label, the Mind of STEM, where you get your daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. Will you do? You have to check that channel out because STEM careers are very important, because right now, STEM definitely makes the world go around. STEM careers are very difficult, but they're manageable if you have the discipline and aptitude to make it through the coursework. And of course, what I'm doing now, I'm combining the 401 Talk Zone radio show, Blog Talk radio show on Zoom, so you can see the actual radio show as I present the message. What I'm doing, I'm basically utilizing Zoom so I can cut down on the time when I make videos. Yes, I'm going to continue to do regular content, but I actually like this format where I cam up and you see all the information, because I will be sharing screens. Now, something else you need to know. Do have a call-in number to the show. It's 215-383-5785. Now, if no one calls in, that's okay with me. I will still do the show as a commentary. Usually the shows I'm going to do until I get participation are going to be in 30-minute blocks. Now, if you cannot find me on YouTube, and I'm talking about the Mind of STEM channel, and of course the 401 Talk Zone radio show along with Blog Talk Radio, you can always check me out on Twitter, MeWe, and Parler. Now, you're not required to donate, but if you want to donate a little bit of money, click on the Cash App and the PayPal at the bottom of all of my videos. Now, again, donating is a voluntary process. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm not a preacher. What I'm here to do is give you the message with truth. Now that I've gotten the introduction out of the way, going to move on to the topic. And it's very important that Black people, because this is a Black person's channel, and yes, there's some other things I'm going to do too before I move on. For the most part, this is a male channel. But if you are a woman and you're listening, you're welcome to participate as well. But this is a red pill space, because I know we all have female subscribers, but most of my audience is male. And when you hear the subject matter, do not get in your feelings, because it's not going to move me one way or another. The information that I'm going to present, you can see it as I share the screens, and you can go back and review it yourself. What I want out of this channel is maturity. See a lot of channels in the African-American space that are fights, full of drama. Not going to have that here. No channels like Little Big Nate. He's not going to have that. My responsibility as a man is to present the information from my perspective and to present the sources. So again, I'm going to get on with the topic. Now, today I'm going to talk about an organization, and it's going to tie into next week's topic. And I'm going to talk about the PPC, the Poor People's Campaign. Now, why am I talking about the Poor People's Campaign? Well, let's go back to May 25th, 2020. That was Memorial Day. That was last year. It was during COVID. Everything was supposed to be shut down. But an event took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it lasted for just over 9 minutes. And I am talking about the death of George Floyd. Now, when it comes to Black people, and I'm going to say this, many people in the African American community, they relish criminals. And if you don't believe me, you look at George Floyd. He was a criminal himself. Now, when you look at the video, it looked very, very irate on how he died. It allowed African Americans to get into their feelings. And I want everybody to like the video. Get the likes up. You can comment as well, but get the likes up. But going back to George Floyd, going back to Rashard Brooks, Freddie Gray, Tavon Martin, and a number of African Americans that were killed by police, like Walter Scott. When we look at those Black people, they did not benefit the community. They had criminal records. But I have to ask, why do we celebrate the deaths of lowly people who are African Americans? Because if you look at the homicide rate here in the country, as African Americans make up 52%, a correction, 13% of the population, they have 52% of the homicides. But the individuals who were children who perished, there was no celebration for them. But yet you give George Floyd 3 funerals. So did he die 3 times? I mean, they gave this man a golden casket. You had President Obama. He went to the church and he made it out to be a political fest. And when it comes to African Americans, one of the reasons why we don't have anything is because we are too focused on religion, jobs, and government. As Minister Japp would say, we are the comfortable Negroes, especially the Gen Xers, the baby boomers. And those 2 generations are very prevalent because they have one thing in common. They vote Democrat. And that's going to tie us into organizations like PPC, which was started by Martin Luther King in 1968. It's still going on now. But if you look at the criteria for the Poor People's Campaign, you would think you're dealing with Black Lives Matter. See, the slogan Black Lives Matter sounds good, but there was nothing in Black Lives Matter for African American men, except the families getting money for the deaths of these men. So as a Black man, your death is worth money to the families who may have cared about you and they may not have cared about you. Because if they really did care about you, you would have had some structure. You'd have been taught better when it came rights and wrongs. But a number of us in the African American community, because it is matriarchal, don't have any home training. Many African American men and women were born out of irresponsible sex. There's a lot of deviance that has taken place in the African American community. I mean, we talk more about feminism in the LGBTQ community and the African American community because, of course, the ABW supports feminism in the LGBTQ community. And if you don't believe me, Black Lives Matter was one that did. And before Black Lives Matter took all the information down from their website, I saw that they were anti-male. They were pro-feminist. They wanted communities to raise families. In other words, everything to be communal. It takes a village, but the foundation starts at home. Of course, BLM made $10.6 billion. That money went to the Democratic causes. But if you look at it, one of the founders, Patrice Cullors, stepped down. Well, the funny thing about it, with all these African Americans talking pro-Black, they don't live in the Black areas. You have LeBron James. You have John Legend. You have Ben Crump, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson. They'll show up to be on camera when something happens to a Black male, but yet they're not going back into the Black communities themselves because they're race hustlers. You have your pastors. And one thing that has really gone bad in the African American community, when you take a look at it, is religion. Religion is an abomination. It is a failure. But let me get on to the topic some more. Now, when we talk about the Poor People's Campaign, again, the Poor People's Campaign, to me, is a Marxist organization. Now, when you look at the fundamental principles, they say they're rooted in a moral analysis based on the deepest religious and constitutional values that demand justice for all. Moral revival is necessary to save the heart and soul of the democracy. First of all, we're not a democracy, we're a democratic republic because we are free with laws for the most part. Now, they also say that they're committed to lifting up and deepening the leadership of those most affected by the word systematic racism. Systematic racism, poverty, the war economy, and the ecological devastation, and to building unity across the lines of division. They also believe in dismantling of unjust criminalization systems that exploit poor communities and communities of color, and the transformation of what we call the war economy into a peace economy that values all humanity. They also believe in equal protection under the law is non-negotiable. Now, I do believe that there should be equal protection under the law. Now, they also believe that people should not live or die or live in or die from poverty in the richest nation ever to exist. And blaming the poor and claiming that the United States does not have an abundance of resources to overcome poverty, they say are false narratives used to perpetuate economic exploitation, exclusion, and deep inequality. Well, first of all, it is the decisions you made. We did have Black Wall Street. We did have Rosewood. The problem is African-American people don't participate in the system. You have to get into the system to understand the system. In other words, too many African Americans vote for one party, and this is all leftism. And what leftists do for African Americans is basically continue the ignorance that we have when it comes to what's going on morally and spiritually, because there's a lot of deviant behavior that the Democrats promote. But they say they recognize the centrality of systematic racism in maintaining economic oppression, and it must be named, detailed, and exposed empirically. Now, when it comes to poverty and economic inequality cannot be understood apart from a society built on white supremacy. Now, you can go back and look at a lot of these principles under the site called the Poor People's Campaign. But these principles, again, are, in my humble opinion, government beliefs. Because when it comes to a lot of these movements, even with the Black Panther movement in the 1960s, they all take place under what we call the guise of communism, Marxism. BLM was a Marxist organization. Now, again, when it comes to the Poor People's Campaign, they also have a Declaration of Fundamental Rights and Poor People's Moral Agenda under systematic racism. The truth is, from what they're saying, is that when the democratic process and the right to vote is restricted, preempted, and nullified, democracy is under attack. Well, for the most part, when it comes to voting, unless you're illegal, unless you've gone to jail, you can still vote. You just need the proper ID. You just need to know who you're voting for, and you need to understand what you want. See, when it comes to the African American community, they don't join lobbyist groups unless they're Democratic lobbyist groups. And for the most part, the African American woman, she's basically gotten a lot of her chips from the government, and she believes in white feminism. This is why a number of us believe that the ABW promotes masculine energy. They want to be men, but they don't understand how to be women themselves. Again, like the video, 215-383-5785 is the number to call. And if you want to call in, my name is Leon Jones. I'm the host of the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on Lowell Talk Radio. But going back to what I said, poverty and equality. Well, do you want to know what keeps us in the state of poverty? Matriarchy keeps us in a state of poverty. Religion. Now, it's nothing wrong with believing in the Most High. You should have some faith. But when faith is your only tool and you don't have resources, you're going to be in a state of poverty. Now, when it comes to African Americans, we're trying to be too inclusive. You have to understand that you cannot save everybody. And in the long run, people who don't want to participate in this country, got to let them die out. You look at white folk. You do not see white folk investing in the lower class white folk. We need to be like that. Sometimes we need to see what other cultures are doing to learn from them and apply those principles. Because again, when it comes to poverty and equality, many African Americans believe in the government. The government will always keep you in poverty because they control what you get. Now, something else. Ecological devastation. Now, according to PPC, it says 13.8 million in the U.S. can't afford water. Now, when I look at the number, you have to be very leery of statistics sometimes. Are they talking about African Americans? Are they talking about a number of other people? Because out of 340 million, 13.8 million is a small number. Well, again, we don't want anybody to be out of water. We don't want anybody to be out of resources. But in the African American community, when you have failed institutions like no patriarchy, no standards, number of children out of wedlock, and these children out of wedlock are coming from the same old dusty Negroes who aren't producers. You can't be in the street forever. But going back to what they're saying, they have all these demands up here. And what we've been doing in the African American communities is continuing LBJ's war on poverty. That's what we've been doing. Has it gotten us anywhere? Absolutely not. And it will never get us anywhere. So my question is, when you have the BLMs and you have the poor people's campaigns out there, what do they really stand for? Because I'm always leery of institutions that believe in Marxist rhetoric. We talk about morality, gun rights. And it's funny how African American men are getting trounced on, but yet they center vagina as their number one focus. They believe in pedestalizing women. If you possess resources, Black man, and you're working with other Black men, regardless of political persuasion, the women will come. But you have to keep your eye on maintaining your community, because everything is not about white supremacy. Although you're made to believe by the white liberal that it's about white supremacy. Now, nobody is saying that racism doesn't exist, but you have a number of individuals who are old heads out here who still believe in systematic racism because they want to be victims. Victimization does not work. And in the long run, as African Americans, we have to be able to provide for ourselves. We have to be able to protect ourselves.
60 seconds.
We have to be able to put people in office that share our views. And everybody cannot be Democrat. I don't understand why you brothers out there continue to support a party that is not for you. That party is for abortion, deviant behavior, LGBTQ, redistribution of wealth, indoctrination education, dumbing you down, keeping you on the totem pole. That's what it is.
10 seconds.
But a lot of you don't want to know that. A number of you don't want to hear the truth because you're in your feelings. And again, these black pastors out here, they're not teaching anything. They're making a lot of money. But again, when it comes to the black people's demands, I mean, their demands are, in my humble opinion, are unrealistic. Now, here they're talking about they want to enact comprehensive, free, and just COVID relief. Well, COVID relief is out with the shots. We've heard that over and over and over again. Guarantee health care for all, regardless of any pre-existing conditions. Obamacare. Now, you see, all this is socialism right here. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You can't raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour if businesses can't afford it. And even if you do, because there are a number of businesses out there that are paying $13, $14, $15 an hour, and they can't get anybody to work. Why? Because individuals are still getting unemployment benefits that are actually paying more in that capacity than it would be to go to work. Guarantee quality housing for all. It's never going to happen. Now, this is all about a Poor People's Campaign, an organization that was started by Martin Luther King in 1968. Enact a federal jobs program to build up investments, infrastructure, public institutions, climate resilience. I call climate resilience the New Deal. That's something Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would talk about. Energy efficiency, socially beneficial industries and jobs in poor and low income communities. Well, that's never going to happen either. Why is that never going to happen? It's never going to happen because with all of that feel good, magical talk, the people have to have the skills to do the jobs. People have to have the education. The people have to want to do the jobs overall. Now, you also have protect and expanding voting rights and civil rights. All you have to do is show your ID to go in and vote, but you need to know who you're voting for. That's the solution. Guarantee safe and quality and equitable public education, which supports for protection against re-segregation. Well, I'm going to tell you this, one of the big problems that African Americans have, because in the long run, whites wanted integration so they could utilize your wealth, because during segregation, blacks were married at a rate of 80%. They were actually making more money. Again, there were other infrastructures out there besides Black Wall Street. People only look at Black Wall Street. Immigration reform. Well, you just can't let anybody into this country. But this administration is allowing individuals in this country and is giving them welfare benefits. And I believe they may have gotten stimulus benefits as well, even though they're not citizens of this country. Ensure all the rights of the indigenous peoples. Enact fair taxes. Use the power of executive orders. The problem with the power of executive orders is that it seems to me that the president, who is in the executive level of government, can bypass Congress. Remember something. You have three branches of government. It should be checks and balance. And checks and balances, if worked right, keep everything, maybe not 100%, but it keeps us from having a monarchy. Again, our government is almost like a parliamentary style government. And it's funny because individuals came over here to get rid of tyranny. But looking at this poor people's campaign, they want government to be the central authority for the economy. Because they talk about redirecting a bloated Pentagon budget towards these priorities as matters of national security. Work with the Poor People's Campaign to establish a permanent presidential council to advocate a bold agenda. Now, again, when it comes to government, I believe government is too big. Government doesn't care about its people. In fact, what we call systematic racism in this country, in my humble opinion, is really classism. Because if we truly had systematic racism, let's look at all the urban areas that are run by Black people. And if you look at the urban areas run by Black people, what has happened? High crime, welfare, low education, no families. And the Black people in power are mayors, city council people, prosecutors for the criminal justice system, superintendents of a school system. So we have been given opportunities. Many of us just don't understand how to run anything. Because many of us have always been taught to worship white Jesus and work for somebody else. And a number of us, when we have power as Black people, we abuse that power. And then you have the people who are supposed to be subordinate to a Black person in an executive position. They're going to call him a sellout. They're going to let their jealousy show. Do you think you're better than me? That always happens. And again, all these urbanized cities are run by Democrats. In fact, you have a number of individuals that are leaving the blue states, coming to the red states. But here's the problem. They don't leave their liberal mindset back at the blue states. They bring it with them. And if you're an African-American person, particularly a Black man, there's no Goldman Sachs that's investing in you. See, Goldman Sachs is investing in Black businesses, Black women's businesses. But what kind of businesses do Black women have? And so you have organizations like Black Lives Matter. They exclude Black men, but they use Black men to enrich themselves. Because in the long run, as Brother Obsidian said, Black men and Black women, for the most part, see things very differently. In fact, the real problem I see when it comes to African Americans is the men. A number of these men out here are very effeminate. Now, the African American women raised these men, but a number of these men have their minds in the wrong place. And when they have their minds in the wrong place, at the end of the day, What's happening is you have individuals out there that are too comfortable. And when I mean comfortable, they enjoy receiving handouts from the government. They don't want to do anything. You know, a number of our African-American scholars who are African-American men, like your Michael Eric Dysons, your Boyce Watkins. Boyce Watkins is a very smart dude or a very smart guy, but he couldn't handle the heat when he was told by opposition why he would marry somebody with children. That is a bad investment, in my humble opinion, but that's what he wanted to do. I'm not criticizing him, but you have individuals in that position that criticize brothers who don't want to marry somebody with someone else's children or become stepdaddies. In my humble opinion, that process doesn't work. And you have a number of individuals who are pro-black. Usually when a man is pro-black, he's pro-black woman as well. I don't hear these pro-blacks talking about economics. I don't hear them talking about planning. I don't hear them talking about investments. It's basically all surrounding the ABW, calling her a guy. A number of these black males, because they're feminine, they really worship women. They're soft. And you have the Mark Lamont Hills, the Michael Eric Dysons, the Cornel Wests. All these individuals, they have intellectual talking points, but when it comes to being in the streets, they make no sense because they've been used to providing everything from an academic standpoint to students. They're blinded by what's going on around them. This is why I say college is nothing but an indoctrination factory. Because when I talked about the PBC in public education, well, for the most part, public education is in the African-American community. It is poor in the African-American community. And a number of these African Americans in power, they just back the white liberal. So if you really think about it, there's no difference between the black liberal and the white liberal. It's just that the black liberal is doing the deed for the white liberal. And these black first. There's nothing wrong with being pro-black. I'm for my race, doing well, but I'm realistic about it. You cannot bring everybody to the forefront because everybody's not going to want to come to the forefront. It's evident. And if you have so-called leaders in one community that aren't doctors, engineers, scientists, but they're rappers or entertainers, something's wrong with that picture. Because again, with all the African Americans out here, you have a number of them who are struggling. And again, as an African American man, we are all we have. But African American men are jealous of one another. That's why we can't establish anything. Again, if we had resources, we stopped thinking about religion all day. We have skills. We have some type of education. We have some type of plan to build some infrastructure. Again, the women will come. But we don't need to entertain women who don't deserve it. And as black men, we don't need to have a woman first mindset. And that is our problem. Certainly, we need to build families. But you can't build families with a number of ABWs who don't believe in you. This is why when you go into their houses, you see a picture of white Jesus. You go into an African-American woman's house. Again, to love an African-American man is to respect. And if you're an African-American man who is doing something, the ABW is not going to respect you. Why? Because she's getting a better deal from the government and Goldman Sachs. We all know that. She's participating in the Democratic Party. And what is the Democratic Party doing to her? Giving her housing, providing her with the welfare state, making her disrespectful, giving her the illusion of power to destroy the brothers. But the brothers just don't see that. They're blinded. Now, my last topic I'm going to talk about is going to be very short. And it's about the bonnets. I saw the videos from Ayanna Van Zant and Monique. Here's what I'm going to say about that. When it comes to wearing pajamas, when it comes to these women with tattoos and colored hair, it depends on where you live. When it comes to being overweight, see a number of white women too. They started this. I can go out every day and see a number of white women out here with pink and blue and green hair themselves and tattoos. I lived in Portage, Indiana. Saw a number of them that went out in their pajamas. Now, when you have pride and respect for yourself, people are going to look at you with some pride and respect. When you go out of your house, you should present yourself in the best way. We're all going to be judged. Even if we wear a suit, somebody's going to tell us something negative about ourselves. It depends on how we take it. But some of you sisters, if you're going out there looking like you should have stayed in the house, you're already worsening your image. And for Monique, who's from my hometown of Baltimore, to get pushback, and Ayanna Van Zant, who's from Brooklyn, both of them are hardcore feminist Black women. In fact, Monique, before she got the weight loss surgery, she was all about body positivity before Lizzo came up with it. But in the end, if you're going out there looking like who did it and ran, that's a problem. And you brothers out here, you're backing this nonsense. You're the problem. I mean, when I see people like some of these rappers up here. And one of the reasons why we don't have a community, because men are not men. They don't know how to be men. They're not even raised to be men. We always say they're daddy issues. What about mommy issues? And for the most part, when it comes to organizations like Black Lives Matter and Poor People's Campaign, they have a lot of rhetoric. But in the end, if you keep voting Democrat, if you keep putting all of your interest in religion, keep believing in government, if you keep believing in Poor People's Campaign, Black Lives Matter, and other Marxist organizations, because Black Lives Matter, they even admitted that they were devout Marxists. If you believe in government being the central body of your life, then you're going to maintain your status of poverty. But if you look at the real world, I'm talking about your brothers out here, because you brothers, too many of you have a woman first mindset. I mean, the women are already gone, the sisters are already gone. But your brothers, go to brothers who are like-minded. Go to brothers who have skills, whether it's a STEM skill or a marketable skill like being a mechanic. If you really want to build a community, you got to know how to disagree, and you can't be jealous of each other. And only if you do that, a community can be built. You can't be calling somebody a coon and you're a liberal lefty brother, and the guy over here is a conservative. You need to look at all ideas. It's not about having an opinion. It's about resources. And if you're going to get into the game politically, you must have an issue, must be well-funded and well-organized for Black people overall. If you really want freedom in this country, you got to start looking at yourselves, stop blaming everything on white supremacy, and stop voting Democrat. Because when you continue to go down that same road that Lyndon B. Johnson provided for you back in the 60s, we're always going to have the poverty and victim mindset. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 401 Talk Zone Radio Show right here on Blog Talk Radio. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And I apologize for all the notifications that kept on popping up during this stream. But my job is to get the message out there. It's not going to be perfect. But again, I want you all to get the likes up on this video and show, and donate as you wish. And at the end of the day, I'm going to leave you with this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And something else to tell you. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, you wear it. And if you don't like the shoe, change it. And coming up next week, I'm going to get into more Black organizations. Do we need them? And I'm talking about organizations like the NAACP, Black fraternities. Do we want to maintain a society of integration, or do we want segregation? That's coming up next week. But again, at the end of the day, just want to thank you all for listening to this edition of the 401 Talk Zone Radio Show. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you to have a wonderful and gracious day. I'm out. Oh, before I go, if you cannot find me on YouTube, whether it's the Mind the STEM channel, the 411 Talk Zone radio show channel, or the Blog Talk radio show. You can always find me on Twitter. You can always find me on MeWe. And you can always find me on Parler. But I'll be continuing some more of these shows because this information is very prevalent. Very prevalent. So at the end of the day, I'm just going to ask this question. Do you want freedom or do you want tyranny? The choice is yours. And once again, I thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on Blog Talk Radio. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you to have a wonderful and gracious day. I'm out.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.